Ay, puente colgante. Wow, sí, 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 baja, sí, sí.
So I have represented the tuition service and we've done some trips.
Okay.
So I guess I'm interested
Sí, sí, sí. Sí, sí, sí.
I just started my and graduating. It was like there was a moment where things shifted this year and there were been there.
¿Quieres esa pegada?
Start her early to be at the table. Everyone will be ready.
Right, right. So we have done it from putting in from one point.
Profesor de...
Not in the Dropbox? Sure, I like literally, I was so worried about this. I sent a picture to my staff showing, see like, here, it's in the Dropbox. It's in the Dropbox for me.
And then they will tell you. Yeah, I'm gonna
It's like in the Dropbox, I know it's in the Dropbox. It's like, but it's showing us in the Dropbox. I don't.
now we know what that is.
It shows in that, see, this is the thing that actually makes it show the page with all parts. I'm gonna send it to you.
She's assigned to follow us. We have a lot of movement.
I'm just gonna open it with my computer.
Yeah, I need to flush out what.
Pues sí,
Started to think about.
I would have done that if it was on the, it was on there. It's like, not, that's so weird.
Yeah.
We can unplug it real quick.
All of our reflections that we had were graded. But then we talked about the experience and that was lost. So it was a nice way.
Yeah.
Y para enseñar y para...
And it's showing up as sent in my exchanges. This is powerful because it's not so me.
Well, I think we're looking for like all this different things. Make sure you send it over to
She had uploaded her
Yesterday.
every other year.
It's like in the shows and doubles in my center.
We just got Steve. Our disaster
I'm gonna stay here till they start. I'm gonna stay. You guys can leave. I'll stay here.
last, and it goes into really intense, but it's mostly a lot.
Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Sorry about the little change in schedule. We just had technical difficulties. But yeah, that's part of life. You know, we have to adapt. We are resilient, so we adapted, and we are going to be starting now our panel. So good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. My name is Mercedes Marinoli, of the Pontifical Catholic University of Puerto Rico, and I'll be the moderator for this panel, Ethics of Teaching, Experiences Teaching Disasters and Service Learning Activities. So without further ado, let's start a little bit with brief introduction. As we have talked about this morning, and all the presidents, or the administrators, all the people that have been involved in the development of this conference, we have to really start, continue the conversation and think about how we do things and how we have done it and what we can do to improve. So basically, the purpose of this panel is basically to think about, how we sometimes are quick to go and provide assistance when something happens, but we have to really stop and think, what's the best way? What does the community that we're going to be serving is going to be needing, okay? And how we can develop our service learning activities, formal courses, and voluntary disaster relief initiatives, how we can deliver them to really serve the community that we are going to be helping. And how we can better prepare us and our students to learn about the community that we serve and what's the context that's happening, what's the culture like if we are going to a different country or a different state, a different area where we belong to. And basically what we have here is a diverse panel that are going to be sharing with us some examples of both university service and learning activity courses and volunteering, and how they work their different initiatives in terms of logistics, and how we can better improve that in terms of coordination. So without further ado, we have our panel, and we have Kim Diana Connolly, Shirley Feldman Jensen, Paola Guzman Cotto, Luis Rodriguez Sanchez, and Yvonne Santiago. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a brief introduction. Each one of the panelists is going to share with us their experience, and then we are going to open up for questions from you and any. So Kim Diana Connolly, she's with the University of Buffalo State University of New Jersey. She's a professor, director of clinical legal education, Vice Dean for Advocacy and Experiential Education, and she'll be sharing the ethical obligations of student attorneys in disaster relief, the rules, the roles, and the reality.
Thank you very much for letting me be part of this discussion. Am I supposed to be talking into a mic?
I don't know.
You can hear, I've got a big voice. We're good, okay. So why don't we go to the first slide, which shows some pictures. So when Maria hit, I was sitting in Buffalo. I had been to Puerto Rico once with my family. I'm not a native Spanish speaker. It is not a community that I'm in. But I've been a clinical law teacher for many years. And as I'm going to tell you the story of what happened is we developed very quickly and have launched, and it's a continuing effort that we call UB Law Response, the Puerto Rico Recovery Assistance Legal Clinic. And in this experience, students get to do both on-the-ground humanitarian work, as you can see with the matching T-shirts, and then legal work, including this picture. And we've met multiple times with the Chief Justice of Puerto Rico. So we are melding all the worlds together because you can't do it without. So the next slide, please. When I talk about ethics, I teach ethics in the summer and I teach ethics in my clinic. When I talk about ethics, a lot of what happens in my brain is I go to the legal ethics world. Our student attorneys are licensed to practice law by the state of New York. Therefore, they become fully obligated to follow all of the rules of ethics, which when many people think about lawyer ethics, there's a lot of thou shalt nots. And there's a lot of that, the many rules that we teach in the classes that we teach. When I teach it in my clinics, and I taught it in the clinic that I've taught a number of times now to go to Puerto Rico, it's broader. It's the type of things that we heard about earlier. It's both the rules, following the rules that lawyers have to follow, but it's following a larger moral compass as well. So let me tell you a little about what happens, the next slide, a little about what happens in legal clinics. There's a number of clinics that sent students to Puerto Rico right after Maria, starting late in the fall and mostly in the winter, and in the semester that followed was when the bulk of them went. I actually have now met with most of the people at clinical conferences or talked with them, and for the people who came from far away, bringing a disaster clinic, I created the most robust clinical experience. My students had to got 6 credits for this experience, and literally the day after they finished exams, they had to come in and meet with me, they had to write a paper. The day after New Year's, they had to come in and they had to have a classroom component for 3 entire weeks of really intense classes getting them ready. Everything from laws to cultural competence, to trauma-informed lawyering, which is the classroom that you can see. So they were in there for 6 hours a day, 4 days a week, for 3 weeks with me before they were allowed to go, which I think was very important to get them ready to do meaningful work. We were then on the ground, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit in more depth, but we worked with local groups in that first trip to do on-the-ground assistance to those who knew the communities well. We went, we called, we partnered with people. We didn't just go to a community and say, hey, I'm some Spanish-speaking students, let me help. We tried to figure out how we could provide really helpful help. And then the thing that also made it unique is at that point they'd done a lot of work, but they still owed me a number of hours. So they came back and they had to do papers, and then we had a conference at the end. And you can see that they created papers. They did a conference, and you might be able to see. You probably can't see because it's a little tiny thing, but you might be able to just trust me to know that Cecilia and Marla were there, as well as some other people. They were there, and part of the ending part, because let me tell you how I came to even be here. My students who went to I love the sound of babies. Just keep talking. We were there, and one of my students met one of Cecilia's students, and they said, you all have to talk. So he drove all the way from Mayagüez to San Juan and met me on a Sunday morning when we were there, and we started talking about the ways that, and he started talking about the ways that he could make me a better teacher. Because I have to tell you, if you go to the next slide, I had never done disaster work. I've done environmental law, an environmental law clinic for many years, which if you do climate change work, it's actually disaster work, but not immediate disaster work. So I had to get ready to do this well. I had to learn how to prepare and teach when everything was changing daily. We literally started planning in November. We've been talking to people, we knew what I was going to teach. And literally 2 weeks into teaching, like, oh, this is what we need anymore. We need your students to do this. I'm like, oh, awesome. I'm ready, we'll just switch it up. I knew that I had to do some trauma-informed care and teaching them to do that. I wasn't prepared to do as much as I had to then do when we were in the thick of it, and they were putting in 14 and 16-hour days, and in this space of shared living quarters. That was something that was very important to me and very important to the ethics of working with students who were then going to be out in the face of being with people. Wow, I had a staff attorney who was from Puerto Rico. I had a colleague who was helping me design this, who's from Puerto Rico. They worked hard to get us to be really culturally competent, but wow. Cecilia and Marla and everyone there taught me so much more about how to do this, and I've gotten better as I've gone along. Worked in ahead of time, and then I changed it up and changed it up and continued to change it up. on how to provide helpful help in a short period of time. I have students who are getting ready. I have students who can do things when they end up. But getting ready to really do it, helpful help, is a real ethical component of bringing students there, not to parachute in and say, ooh, look at me taking pictures of being helpful, to really provide something that's not going to be taking away from the bandwidth or work that people there want to do, but that's providing and increasing the bandwidth. Figuring out how to truly care for student attorneys. I had one student attorney who ended up getting off the plane and going straight to the emergency room because it was such an intense experience for her doing all the work. That was really a new experience for me because I usually just have my people, you know, in Buffalo. So I don't take them away for 10 days. I've never taken them away for 10 days. Pivoting to the best way to help them figure out they left and then they were like, all I can do now is write a paper. There's still work to be done. The failings that they came when they came back was really interesting to me. And then continuing to make sure that we're connected and in sync with those we hope to serve. So even though I did multiple days of training them in the laws of how we do intake and how we make sure that we're going to be, you know, complying with conflict laws and how we do confidentiality when we're working with people who may not even be able to understand the Spanish that my fluent Spanish-speaking students had because it's Puerto Rican Spanish. It was like a lot of things to get through in just like legal ethics world. But when you look more broadly, and you look more broadly of working with and walking and working with people, it was a very big experience for me. So my next steps, I've gotten better at this. I've figured out how to provide help in a way that is helpful help going forward and building resiliency going forward. So I continue to do this, and I am taking students in January. This time I'm taking a cohort of students as well from another school, from the language and literature, people who are learning to be professional interpreters. So I'm taking some other students this time. And figuring out how to make meaningful and appropriate connections. I'm so excited about this conference because I want to figure out how to do this. Making sure, as I said, that my resilience work doesn't replace local bandwidth. It expands what's there. We're not there to replace. And I think that one of the things that is, if we want to be figuring out how to provide helpful help, figuring out how to further support. This is a picture of our second. These are pictures from our second trip when our dean came. And when we were doing, at that point, the humanitarian relief efforts weren't as needed and the rebuilding efforts during the second term were needed. So we pivoted to what we were offering in terms of our days that we were doing on the ground work rather than the lawyering work. So I'm very excited to hear more from people and then talk more about connecting with people to make this deeper. And the thing that I want to do also is write something so that somebody who comes up with the next situation where they want to bring students to help has more ideas about some of the things that can make it easier and better and more respectful and more ethical.
Thank you. Next up, we're gonna Paola Guzman Roca. She has worked with the National Institute for Energy and Sustainability as a research assistant, and she will be sharing her experience.
Hi, and good morning. So my name is Paola. I work with INESI. I am a descendant from Marla and Cecilio. They were my teachers. I worked for them for 2 years in INESI. This past January, Marla approached me because Albany wanted to bring a group of students and they needed someone helping coordinate and hosting the group of students. And she approached me and I said yes. It was going to be time aside from my family and from holiday, because in Puerto Rico holiday lasts a lot longer than in many countries. So I said yes, and I met Martha and Sam and communicated with them. And they had a group of about 25 students who wanted to do volunteer work. So we reached a community. I'm not from Mayagüez. I'm from the other side of the island, from the east side, and I'm studying in the west side, so I didn't know Mayagüez very well. And Joanne, who's back there, she coordinated with Marla, and they reached out to AMPI, which is a nonprofit, and they work with disabled people. But after Hurricane Maria, they expanded and created AMPI for Puerto Rico, and AMPI for Puerto Rico was helping rebuild houses and rebuild after Hurricane Maria. So we reached them out, and they agreed to receive the volunteers from UAlbany, and several other students from UAlbany were working with speakers, and they took like kind of a classroom experience in AMPI, and they were working on a one-credit course, I think, with another professor that came from there. But my work was mostly hosting and working as a breaking up the language barrier and the community barrier that they didn't. So I think you were talking about what can you do to reach communities better. I thought my job was going to be easy. So I thought you were going to be there 10 days, they're going to come and help, but it was a lot of work because they, in different, with your students, they didn't speak Spanish. So my job was to make them understand, my job was to connect them to the community, so I think that would be helpful in future situations, like there needs to be a need there. So one of the last things we did, they went to paint houses, but the things I noticed, like when we first got there, Puerto Ricans, they called people from the US like gringos. So when we got there, it was a really impoverished community, like one of the most poor communities in Maya West. And they were like skeptical to accept and help. Most people didn't want them to come into their homes. And so I had to sit with them and, get them to meet each other, even though they couldn't understand each other, because Puerto Ricans, most of us understand English, but people from poor communities, they won't understand them. And there's a stranger in my home, even though he has the disposition to help me, I don't want him in my home. So breaking those barriers was hard. And La Chobra was a big community, and I couldn't be everywhere. There were 25 students, there were a lot of crew members, so I had to sit with the crew members, introduce them to the students. I had to tell the students, you're gonna follow this crew member. He speaks poor English, but he's gonna guide you, and you need to be humble, and you need to, so you can connect with the community, so the community will let you help them. And I think one of the things we did one of the last days that we should have done the first day was that one of the last days we went to AMPI Center, and the head of the center, spoke to them and explained them where AMPI came from and why they selected that community, and so that we should have done earlier at the start, and then they could have gotten to know better the community. They also had we took them and they had the opportunity to go to visit two communities in Puerto Rico. One is in Adjuntas and one is in Añasco. One is in Añasco, and the one in Añasco has a community aqueduct for more than 50 years. So they got to meet that community, and they got to speak to them, and they got to see like a self-sustaining community to learn from. And we also went to Adjuntas, and in Adjuntas there's a school forest. And there's a community there that tries to self-sustain itself, and they created a school forest for people from all around the island can come and teach their students in nature. So they had the opportunity to visit that too. And
Well, I think and I hear from both of your experiences that, and it's part of the conversation we're going to have once each of our panelists share their experience, is what they learn and what we could do, to improve in the next time. What would be good talk to the community first and let them know why we're here. You know, that's one of the first things that I think both of you can adopt that in. And learning the context is very important. And the language, you know, having someone, if you don't speak the language, to have the intermediate or the translator that can help you connect with the community. So thank you so much. So now we're going with Luis Rodriguez Sanchez, and as we can see, we have so far, you know, very diverse panel. We have from law, from student, and then now music. So music is important. We have he's a composer and songwriter from Callerito al Arrest. Es en música. So, Luis.
Hi everybody. So yeah, I think it's relationships, right? It's just, it's in relationships. And when you go to a place, I'm a composer. I was living I'm from Mariana. I grew up in Mariana, Macau, a mountain. When the hurricane struck, that was kind of the first place we get hit. And it boils down to communication and to actually just listening. You will be really amazed how much you learn when you listen to the people that are living in a moment of emergency, right? And there's different moments in when something hits like a hurricane or an earthquake, or but if you can be kind and close your eyes for just 30 seconds and think, spending 1 month without electricity, how your lives will, I don't have any of it, but you can do it inside your heart. I know it's difficult, but if you can close your eyes and just